Okay, Dave. So we've talked about the, you give us a good insight there. Give us a bit of an insight into you. So give us some background information. Who is Dave Edwards?
Okay, so if I can remember back all the years, so originally from the northwest of the country, and I'm trying to make this about how I led into gambling. So when I left school, as most people did back then, or certainly the lads, you went and did an apprenticeship or joined the armed forces, whatever. In fact, I'll tell you a story about that at school. My old physics teacher, I remember him, he stood up once and he announced to the class, to the guys in particular, he said, the guys will go one of three ways. He said there was some that will leave and do engineering apprenticeships, there is some that will leave and go in the armed forces, and there's some who will go to jail. And years later, he was right for most of the people that went to my school. Anyhow, I didn't go to jail, thankfully. I did an apprenticeship for 4 years. And most of that time I was working away, and I enjoyed being away, doing different parts of the UK. My apprenticeship come to an end, and I was then in a position where if I was to continue, it was contract work, so very good money whilst you're contracting, but the job could come to an end and then you're out of work. I wanted something more secure, hence I joined the armed forces. So I remember walking into the, many years ago now, into the careers office, and it was the Army and the RAF, and I was like, well, do I go in the Royal Engineers, do I go in the REME, and then I ended up going in the RAF.
They don't always get it right, listeners, do they?
Yeah, but yeah, it was a thing for me. I'd always had an interest in joining the forces because it's a small world that we live in, and I see so many people. I don't want to call them stick in the mud. It's each to their own. But I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in the same town, city, doing the same thing day in, day out. I wanted to spread my wings, go and see the world, travel, and that was the reason behind me joining the Air Force.
Okay, so tell us where your interest in betting came from. Where did that fit into all that?
I think you go back to the days when I was an apprentice, and my friends that I used to knock about with then, and some of them had apprenticeships, other jobs. But Saturdays always seemed to revolve around going to the pub, and in typical fashion where I used to live, you had the top road of pubs, and then you'd have an independent bookmakers, and then your fish and chip shop or your Chinese takeaway for when you'd finished your session. So initially there's a few of my friends who were into horse racing, so I'd follow them into the bookies, and it was the old bookies with the the multicoloured fly curtain, and you'd go in and part your way through the smoke, pick up a betting slip, and I was more inclined to football back in them, the old football 2 from each section coupons, and I actually what really made me caught the bug was I actually won the 2 from each section once. This is going back, this is over 30 years. I think it was the season that Leeds United won the championship, so it must be 31 years ago. I did 2 from each section, I had £1 on it, and we used to go in the pub, we'd have a few pints, and then the old teletext, and you'd check your scores at half time, and that's doing okay. And then towards the end, I was waiting on one, and I think it was Hartlepool, and they were winning 1-0. But there was an awful lot of injury time, so it was just absolute torture. And you didn't have live pictures then; you were just watching on the teletext, and it come up full time. So again, I was still an apprentice then, and I won. I think it was about £1,200, and that was a lot of money for me then. That was an awful lot of money. So, I was a bit taken like, oh right, I can make a go of this. And of course, it's just a stroke of luck that I won that. But yeah, that's what hooked me and began me on my journey from gambling and up to where I am now with trading.
Well, that's that journey. The other journey, the RAF journey, led you to Afghanistan, which is a little bit less rosy, I imagine.
Yes, I mean, I had a fantastic time in the Air Force. You know, I could sit here, you ex-forces yourself, you know, we could share many tales, and I could have you in floods of tears of laughter or, you know, tears of sorrow. And, you know, unfortunately, Afghanistan, some of the things that you see out there, it really drives home how fortunate we are. I did a 4-month tour out there. Away from, you know, my wife, we hadn't been married that long at the time, and we just moved out. I was actually based in Cyprus at the time, so out to Cyprus and then back to the UK to go to Afghanistan for 4 months. Real valuable time of my life, you know, something obviously I would never forget, and it just made me realise how fortunate we are. You know, some of the things in the Western world, or certainly this country, that we grumble about, you know, we don't know how lucky we are. We really don't. Seeing some heartbreaking things. It affected me in the way that when I came home, I used to get quite, not annoyed, but people would complain about what I would call niff-naff and trivia. Oh, my car's broke or something like that. And, like, you know, go a few thousand miles that way, and there's people who have got real problems. And some people may turn around and say, oh, well, you know, they deserve for what the things, but the majority of the people there were lovely, lovely, welcoming people. They had nothing, and yet when we were out on the streets, they'd come up and, you know, even if it was a sweet or something, that's all they had. And they were offering it to you. They were such nice people, and they were so glad of our help. Obviously, there was the element who, you know, weren't too happy that we were there and, you know, up to no good. But it was an important. It changed my mindset on a lot of things being out there. And I think it may be difficult for people to understand, you know, who've never been in the forces and never been in that situation. It may be difficult for them to comprehend. But anybody who has been, it can. Yeah, it does change your outlook on a number of things. It was a tough 4 months, but a very valuable time, very rewarding time. And, you know, we were there to help people, which we did, and, you know, helping them rebuild schools and universities, what happened, and looking at them going and, you know, getting an education. Absolutely fantastic. And then, you know, recently, when you see what's happened, you know, almost back to square one. And it's, you know, I still lie there at night sometimes thinking about those people and what they're going through now, you know, and all the work that we put in to try and help them, and it's just been undone in the blink of an eye.
And in a roundabout way, did your experiences over there make the sort of trading risks seem extremely trivial and sort of give you a bit of a sort of, I don't know, stronger mindset when it comes to what you do?
In a way, yes, because, you know, there were risks out there, very severe risks. Ultimately, you know, you're going to lose your life. So I think when you know, you put in financial risks into the context against what you were risking out there, then yeah, it made me more, you put things into perspective. Well, you know, this is nothing like what I went through there. That was a completely different element of risk. So yes, it did. It made me a stronger person, and yeah, it did help with the sort of the risk element of things.
Okay, so on a lighter note, we've, in a roundabout way, become acquainted because of another interview, Andy Gibson.
Andy,
Professional
yes.
punter, the enigma that is,
Yeah.
Andy Gibson. How did you get involved with Andy?
Yeah, so Andy's, well, I'm pleased to say Andy's a good friend of mine now. So I think a few years ago, Andy was reaching out and he wanted, you know, a group of fellow racing enthusiasts, friends, if you like, to put a few quid into a pot to get 2 or 3 horses, which we did. So we had 3 horses with Mickey Hammond up in Midland. who we had a great day out with, Mickey and Gemma, the other week at the football. And I just got to know Andy, you know, several stable visits. Every time we go up there, absolutely great day, lovely people at Midland. Got to know Andy well, and yeah, we've become good friends. You know, we exchange ideas. Andy is more from an outright the fire and forget bets, if you like, but on the national hunt racing, and he is Mr. National Hunt Racing. You know, he's what Andy doesn't know about it. It just doesn't exist. He's, you know, the ultimate professional, if you like, when it comes to that. And I know how hard he works and the hours that he puts in. You know, I'll speak to him at a weekend, and you know, he's still at his desk at some unearthly hours where most of us are sat downstairs having a beer. So very hard-working, you know, dedicated, professional, and that just goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, if you're not prepared to put that hard work in and do your analysis and your graft, you know, you get out what you put in. Andy's successful because he works very, very hard at what he does.
Now, football trading, we're coming to the end now, but football trading, is it something that can be looked upon as a long-term income source? You talked earlier about the way things are changing. Do you think there's a lot of longevity in football trading?
As long as Team A is playing Team B and there's markets on Betfair, yes. I don't think that's going to change overnight. I think with regard to outright markets and, you know, the bookmakers, we don't know where we're going to be with regard to the gambling review. I'm not too concerned because I'm predominantly exchanges. I know people do pin their, you know, most of their business on the bookmakers. We don't know what's going to come out of that, but I'm pretty sure that the future's fine for football on the exchanges. One of the things I think a lot of people talk about, you know, if America were to come online, then, you know, your volume, etc., is going to go through the ceiling, and that betting bank that we were talking about before, you know, you could revise that because you only want to put money into a market where you are not going to stand out, you know, like a swinging sunflower in an empty field. What do I mean by that? Well, you know, your markets on let's say a Monday meeting at Hexham or something like that, if you were to put £10,000 into the market, you know, people are going to spot you. But if going back to the football, you know, where there can be tens of thousands of pounds in a market, you know, you'd be able to put that in. But yeah, I think there is long term in it, yes. I think, you know, Betfair's evolving, the more and more markets they add, but for me, those core markets will always be there. And yeah, it's good. For me, it's got a long-term future.
Right, final question. You mentioned you got a date in mind for when you're going to be full-time professional punter or professional trader. Can you tell us when that is?
Yeah, well, firstly, people say to me, a friend of mine years ago said to me, "Oh, professional gambler, don't you have to earn £1 million a year to be classed as a professional gambler?" I was like, well, I hope not. Now, whether there's people that do, fantastic. I certainly don't. But define professional. So you could say, well, okay, what's a professional bricklayer? Somebody who has done an apprenticeship, you know, served their time, is competent at what they do, is respected by others at what they do, since they want to employ them, and they earn money to go home and support their family. Same thing, so professional punter. Do you know what you're doing? You know, have you served an apprenticeship? I've served a long apprenticeship through trading and betting. Are you competent at what you do? I'd like to think, yes, I am. And can you make a regular income from it? Yes. So that's my take on the phrase professional punter. So with regard to a time frame, so I must stress that I have a job, a very good job. That's my focus. When the current contract comes to an end that I'm working on, which will be maybe about 4 or 5 years' time, and I'm in a position then where my mortgage is gone. I don't have to worry about that safety net to pay the mortgage, and I can concentrate on doing this full time.
Brilliant. Well, we wish you luck, David Edwards. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.